Pleased to be joined by Marshall Dane. Marshall, I saw you a couple weeks ago at the CMAOs in London, where you were up, I believe, either for the 5th or 6th year in a row for Male Artist of the Year. Tell me about that.
Yeah, brother, that was a great experience over the CMAO. That is my 5th time, and I like your positive attitude. Maybe I'll get a 6th time out of this. You know, it's great. It's great to have your province, the whole province, rooting for you and giving you some kind of encouragement so that you can push on and persevere through the times when it's not so encouraging.
Now, 5 times you've been up for it. What would it mean for you, do you think, if you were to win it?
You're asking good questions. You know, I think at this point it would be surprise. I like the fact that I just get nominated, and now it's kind of the point where it's fun that I make it in, and like I said, I like to just be in the association with those guys. I think not winning now is kind of my thing.
I gotta say, it amazes me that you don't win because you're phenomenal. You've got a very interesting sound. I keep trying to describe it. I mean, it's not Blue Rodeo, it's not Neil Young. Tell me kind of what makes up your sound.
Well, it's probably a little bit of both of those groups and a whole lot of, everything else that my older sisters influenced me in listening to. Somebody described it once to me. They said, Marshall, you're not cowboy country. He said, and you're not really drinking country. You're kind of motorcycle country. And I kind of thought, you're right. The sound of my music, it's definitely, we do songs about drinking, but it's kind of motorcycle country.
It's funny you bring up motorcycle. I know that's a huge thing of you. You loved motorcycle. Tell me about that.
The motorcycling is something that has just been a part of my life ever since I was a kid. My father has ridden a motorcycle my whole life. When we were just teenagers, my dad would we were babies, my dad would put us on the motorbike. As a teenager, my sister and I rode on the back of motorbikes through Alberta, through the Rockies, through Banff Springs. It was great. It was a great experience. So I just have an affinity for them now. I'm not a collector or anything like that, but I do like a cool, smooth ride.
Do you watch American Choppers at all?
If I had cable, I'd watch American Choppers. But yeah, that kind of show just makes me jealous and envious of those that have those awesome bikes.
Now, you brought it up earlier, your sisters. Now, what I find really fascinating about you is you come from a family of 7 siblings. What was that like growing up? And obviously, you're the predominant music person in your family. Were the others kind of taking an interest in that, or was it just you? What was that like?
Again, man, great questions. My sisters and my 2 brothers, everybody's musical, and everybody enjoys it. Mostly, it's my 4 sisters and myself that really do it a lot. And I was just, for instance, as I was traveling to this interview, my mother and I were speaking, and she was telling me about how my sister has just started playing the piccolo. I didn't know she played the piccolo, but she's playing it in the orchestra. So we all have a real attraction to music and a love for learning music, like expressing it. But I am definitely the one in the family that decided to take it as professional and try my hand that way. So I'm sure they all kind of live vicariously through me.
Yeah, and I believe that you were actually raised on music. Your father was a preacher. I think he taught you something called the farmer's song, and your mother plays piano. Tell me about the kind of impact that has on your sound and what that was like in terms of getting you launched into a professional career in music.
Well, I think the fact that the songs that my parents listened to had meaning. They had depth. They had stories that weren't frivolous, but had a lot of thought into them. And when I used to listen to Johnny Denver songs, and I knew he wrote those songs. At least I thought he did as a kid. When I listened to Kenny Rogers, I didn't know or care either way that he wrote them because I felt like he was the gambler. He was that guy, and the gambler was writing all these songs. So it felt real to me. That quality, being fed that quality as a young person, just seemed to impact the quality that I wanted out of my own music. And over the last few years recording, I have found myself happily or positively frustrated looking for something more out of my music because I didn't know how to tap in to what that was that made me so encouraged or in love with music as a young listener. But now I'm starting to really, what those guys taught me was to be honest in your songs and to really talk about your own experiences. I mean, even though Kenny Rogers maybe wasn't writing it, the way he made the person feel was if he did. And so my way is, if I am going to sing somebody else's song, I'm going to have to make it my own so that I feel it, and or I have to sing my own songs so that the expression is from that part of the body as opposed to just performing it. I mean, I can do that, but I really love to feel it from all the insides too.
Now, I got to ask you brought up Kenny Rogers, I believe, actually, John Denver, but one other artist that seems to have a big impact on you, and you actually opened for them and played with them, actually got to play with them at the CMAOs, was Blue Rodeo. Talk to me about how they kind of impacted your sound and your career, because I know that you've done multiple things with them.
The Blue Rodeo guys, there's a couple of things that were really encouraging about that project. One, to open up for Blue Rodeo, they have to approve their opening act. So the good thing about that is you get that little feeling of, I don't know if the word is adulation, but it's when they make you, when they kind of give you the thumbs up, So that was great. Also, the encouragement as professionals in the industry, when I show up as a young, new, inexperienced compared to them, they treated me like a regular guy, totally fine. It was just complete camaraderie. So, of course, then the next time you see them, they were making jokes about my outfit and what I was wearing. And I love that. I think that was, I thought that was, had a lot of guts to make a joke to me about my clothes, and B, I just thought it was fun that he actually remembered what I was wearing. So it's a warm feeling when guys in your industry treat you like a brother without having to go and prove how your coolness in the industry itself. It's like, that's not what it's about.
You were pretty new compared to they've been around for a long time. So what kind of advice did they give to you when you first met them?
Well, here was one piece of advice the guy gave me. Don't go over time. So there's something to learn, like they told me you had 45 minutes, then something happened technically and it went down to 40 minutes, and then they couldn't find the announcer and it went down to 37 minutes. But I remembered that they said, please, whatever you do, don't go over time. And I made sure that I had a clock on stage that I could see and reference, so that when I looked and said they wanted me to play for only 40 minutes and we're going to stop at 37, so that they're even happier, they get extra time. And that taught me that, again, just reiterated the importance of respecting the people that you're opening up for and that are giving you the opportunities.
I looked at some of the places that you've played, and it's really interesting. You've played in the Arctic, the Northwest Passage, Greenland, Labrador. You've opened for guys like David Suzuki, and you played for Inuit communities. Talk to me about those experiences, and I know that the Inuit communities was very special for you. Talk to me about all of those, and I guess what made them so special for you.
Inuit communities, what they did for me was they opened my eyes to the big picture. And by that, I mean, we in a metropolitan society think we have the big picture. But our big picture is filled with micro distractions. And when you get into a atmosphere where the land, as well as the climate environment and the people that inhabit it are such like the Arctic, all of a sudden you realize the more big picture, that being, your graciousness to your life, your graciousness for your warmth, for your health, for your safety, for your food, for your love, for all those things. It's just very prominent there. It's in everything. It's the beauty. It's the mountains. It's the polar bears. It's the people. It's a great example of a life that seems so far removed from most of the things that I've experienced, and I think most people experience. So it's an amazing humility and humbling experience.
Now, I've got to ask, because I'm curious, obviously he's a legend. What is it like performing for a guy like David Suzuki?
This is how the David Suzuki thing went down. I had an opportunity to be with David Suzuki and Alex Trebek, the guy from Jeopardy. So what happened was, as one plane was crossing, my friend Tom was traveling with David Suzuki. I was about to meet up with Alex Trebek. So I actually got to perform. I didn't actually meet David Suzuki. He was in the audience as they were leaving Greenland and went away. But my times with, say, Margaret Atwood and Alex Trebek, John Huston, I know that the related stories that I heard from David Suzuki were such that, these kind of filmmakers and these kind of naturalists have such a vast amount of experience and knowledge and positive ways of looking forward to our planet. It's neat. They're scientists. They're real. Except for Margaret Atwood, I guess. But they're real scientists in their art. I mean, Margaret is too of her art. They bring a real passion and a global kind of sense to some of the stuff that I was learning out there. They bring some global emergency to it, and then they go and they leave that spot and make that part of their mission statement to let people know about what's going on up there. Again, a very humbling experience.
Now, you've played a lot of places. You've played the Music Row Freak Show at the Blue Bar in Nashville. You played Perry Sound, that was with Blue Rodeo, and you played Turtle Fest. Tell me, A, about those experiences, and B, what is your favorite type of venue to perform? Is it a big festival? Is it a small, intimate club? What is your favorite kind of place to perform?
The Music Row Freak Show was a great show. Of course, the Turtle Fest and Strawberry Fest and Summer Jam, all these different festivals are amazing. Playing in Nashville down on Music Row is a great experience. It allows you to kind of get a gauge for what you know that you do back home amidst your peers who, you're kind of at the cream of the crop there. So you really have to, you keep your eyes open and watch what their response is to what you're doing, because they're used to seeing some of the best. So that's a great eye-opener and a great tool. And as far as my favorite types of performances, for different reasons, I like the intimate show and the massive show. The massive band shows are amazing because you have an opportunity to try and sway and move a gargantuan amount of people. And that is a thrill. When you are dealing with private shows and smaller venues, you have the ability to get very intimate and to really discuss some of the depth and detail that, in front of 30,000 people, you cannot ever get into that kind of detail. You can't tell exactly how this song was written. You don't have time or the acoustics to do so. But in an intimate show, you can really tell people where that song Motorcycle came from, or where that song About Last Night, how that came about.
You've got a lot of things coming up. You mentioned it, Strawberry Fest, Peach Fest. On August 26th, you're playing Port Perry for Canada Day. You're playing the CNE, but one thing that I know people are going to go crazy for is the Havelock Country Jamboree. What are you looking forward to the most about those?
I think the Havelock show, my biggest exciting anticipated moment there is going to be that massive stage and that gigantuan audience. I mean, we're playing, I forget, Justin Moore, I think is who we're going on right after. And it's going to be a hot house. Like, it's going to be crazy. And we're just planning on ramping it up even more. So that in itself, learning how to contain that excitement beforehand and after is part of learning how to focus your superhero energy. Yeah, because it's going to be a lot.
Now, one thing that I've found out about you, which I'm not sure how many people would know this, is you can do archery and karate. Tell me, A, what got you into those, and B, if you still keep those up.
Yeah, both of those things are definitely passions of mine, and I do keep them up. Karate, I don't do the same as I used to. I used to go very frequently to a private dojo, and I love to study that way. It was never a commercial thing for me. It wasn't a trophy thing. It was strictly about the sensei that I initially had lived in his dojo and made little plant gifts for people. He was very, very in touch with his zen and his energy, and that was amazing. That was what I wanted, and that's why I got into it, and that's what I always loved about the martial arts. Archery is another form of snooker. It's another form of darts. It's another form of testing your or honing your skills and your accuracy. I love the challenge of hitting a 4x4 inch object from 40 meters away. I personally practice traditional style archery, which just means that there's no real gadgets to it. It's a chunk of wood and a string. Yeah, it's very, very satisfying, fulfilling. It's a great sport.
Now, I'm curious. We're sitting here eating, Timmy, so I got to mention this. You are a foodie. That's one thing I know I've seen on your social media. I saw a post about pineapple and blueberry cake, something about someone's getting juiced, and a post about mushrooms. Talk to me about being such a foodie and why and what's going on there.
The food thing is really just another branch of creation. I love to create. I love to create songs. I love to create pictures. I'm not a good painter, but I like to paint. And I love to cook. I was exposed to good food in the poorest phase of my life. I was exposed to beautiful restaurant, gorgeous top-end 5-star restaurant food, but I was the poorest person in the restaurant playing music, entertaining the rich people. And so I made it my mission to always ask the chef at these 5-star brilliant restaurants. I'd always say, can you give me a simple recipe I can make at home that would blow anybody away? And they're like, yeah. Put these 4 ingredients together and put that on a pasta, and they will go nuts. And sure enough, you put that in. And here's a trick when you're making pasta. If you use a little bit of brie cheese, a little bit of light cream, and Worcestershire. Worcestershire is the trick. I mean, hot peppers also go good in that, and a bunch of other things. Yeah, I always try and ask them little hints, because I love to eat beautiful, expensive, rich foods, but I can't afford it. Or I love to eat in that way. So how do I do that for myself? And through the process, I've learned how to, just create fun food stuff, and I love that.
Now, I just wanted to ask you about some of your songs. I mean, most of your songs are pretty straightforward in what they're about, but I wanted to ask you about Take You Home to Mama, Why Can't I Leave, Sorry About the Mess, My Country Song, I Needed This, Lynchburg is Dry, and Crying Over. What are those songs all about?
Well, I tell you, just going into the new stuff that I've been writing as well, I don't think ever again going forward anybody will ever say that there's ever songs that are kind of middle of the road, because we're not doing that anymore. And as a poignant thing, because I don't want to write middle of the road songs anymore, let me tell you, songs like Crying Over, songs like Why Can't I Leave, Crying Over, Sorry About the Mess, let's go there first. Those songs are basically all about the same girl. They're all about the same heartbreak. They're about the same feeling of not knowing the answer. And, Sorry About the Mess is clearly about her not knowing the answer. And then me saying, well, hey, why don't you just look over here? I could be the answer. Why Can't I Leave is clearly me not knowing the answer. All those questions in relationships, and I still to this day, as much as I write about it and try and write it down, I still got no clue. Zero. I mean, these songs are really just a method of therapy to try and figure out my feelings. And Take You Home to Mama, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's just a part of the tongue-in-cheek love and alcohol kind of sure thing, dress up in saran wrap kind of comments. I like to be a little cheeky. Take you home to mama when mama's not home. I know she'll love you, girl, I swear, but I'll love you more if she's not there. That's just kind of part and parcel with my funny guy sense of humor.
Now, I want to ask you about a couple of other events that you have done recently. You did a green room performance. I want to ask you about that, and I also want to ask you about this whole Tuesday night church thing you've got going on, because I find that very interesting. I've followed it for a while now, and I find it very interesting. Maybe if you could just talk about that a bit.
Well, the green room performance, I think that was just us actually doing something backstage, or that was also actually a show where I was doing a bunch of talking about just green room stuff that was, behind the scenes thing. The Tuesday night church, I used to go to church every Tuesday with my dad and my mom. So when I stopped going to church, they would always say, aren't you going to church? I'm like, I'm not going to church. And then finally I said, I'm going to church. Like, you're going to church? I'm like, yeah, Tuesday night church. I was playing every Tuesday night. And I started telling my audience from the microphone, from the stage, I'd be like, hey, welcome to Tuesday night church. And people thought it was weird, but it kind of stuck. And then when I stopped playing every Tuesday and I moved out to the country and decided, how am I going to maintain a original only showcase, I thought I'll just do it online. So that's where the Tuesday Night Church online episodes were born. And I've tried doing them in front of a live audience and it doesn't work. I mean, if I had my back to them, maybe. But having them in front of me, it doesn't work. Tuesday Night Church is strictly a me and the camera kind of vibe.
Talk to me about playing with the Western Swing Authority, because they also have a very, very unique sound. Same to you. I mean, you've got... It's a country rock sound you've got, but it's a lot different than your typical country rock. Well, the Western Swing Authority also have a unique sound. What is it like playing with them and having your two very distinct sounds go together?
Well, the Western Swing, they're a great band. They backed me up at a show the other day, and we didn't even rehearse. We did nothing. We just met at the show, and they had all my songs learned, memorized, and played it with heart as if they'd been playing it their whole life. So it was, not only are they impressive every time I've ever seen them, but they're a great group of guys to work with. They're just pros all the way.
Now, I know we spoke earlier about influences. There's one more name I want to ask you about, Don Graham.
Don Graham's a great Canadian artist. I met him a couple of years ago, and he's one of those guys that hands you a CD, and during your drive, you pop it in, and you are so happy with it. I loved his sound. I love his songs. I love the humility and the sincerity in the tunes. Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's just got some great music, so I was totally digging his vibe. And it's nice not hearing, you put on the radio, you hear what everybody else hears. Sometimes you dig a little deeper, you get to hear some of the other stuff that's kicking.
Now, I noticed that you posted that you learned about yourself at the CMAO events in London that weekend. Tell me what you kind of learned about yourself that you didn't already know.
Now we're getting personal. And the reason I say that is because you're not the first person to ask me what I meant by that. And by that, I mean, I had some close friends say, "What did you learn?" Because they too were curious. They were like, what could you have possibly learned that you didn't already know, that you learned on Sunday? What was Sunday? And here was the thing. I got real scared. I was real nervous. I was bothered by some stuff that I had heard musically that came down the wire that affected me personally and affected me like in a big way, business-wise. And I was discouraged and feeling very vulnerable. I felt like I was open for attack. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I tried to do all kinds of real positive things, and none of it was really coming to me. And I found that leading up to that, I had all kinds of unfortunate news, and then I did a great show with Blue Rodeo. And so I was confused because I had such great feelings, such amazing feelings, and yet I had such negative stuff going on as well. So it was a real kind of hurricane in my body. And then I went to the CMAOs, and it was almost as though the seas just settled. Everything settled. Like my nerves weren't. I don't know. Like there was a certain calmness, I guess, that arrived inside of me, and I just realized that it was okay to be different. It was okay to be the underdog. It was okay to be the guy that wins or that gets nominated 5 times and doesn't win. It's okay that I'm not even worried about it. It was like it was okay. All that stuff, and I was kind of racked up, and it's like it's not. Don't get racked up. Don't let yourself get overworked about stuff. It's not necessary. And anyways, and so I did. I got overworked for no reason. And once I kind of got in there and got settled, I was totally cool. And I was back to myself. I mean, if you saw what I wore, I was wearing my holiest of shirts and my rippedest of jeans, and I felt like $1 million. Anyways, yeah, it was an interesting experience, but I walked out of there a way better person.
Now, because I am Jordan Freeman with Canadian Beats now, I gotta ask, you've got pretty awesome hair. You got any cool hair stories? And tell me, where does that hair come from?
Yeah, the hair story that I've got is my sister tried to dye it blonde when I was a kid because they wanted to know what sunning would do to your hair. So instead of them doing it to themselves, they did it to me first, at which point I ended up going to school with orange hair. And I didn't know any better because I am colorblind. That's another fact that a lot of people don't know. And so to me, the difference between orange and red is not much, or orange and blonde. It was all the same to me. You could tell me that orange is blonde. I'm like, all right. So yeah. Now, where the hair comes from, I'm going to say it comes from my mom and my 3 older sisters. When they grow their hair out or they let their hair down, we look like 4 chicks. Like we look like 4 girls. It's kind of embarrassing at that point, but I didn't know I actually had wavy anything hair until I actually grew it out. I wasn't allowed to grow it out as a kid. So, yeah, it's kind of an odd thing. And the trick that I do to it is nothing. I wash it and dry it, and that's it.
Well, as a hockey fan and as a rock and roll fan as well, I love it. Now, I just want to finish up the interview with asking you about tonight's event, what you're looking forward to with tonight's event over at Mulligans.
Well, this is our local jam. So we get to take it easy. We get to relax. I mean, we always relax on our big shows, but this is, where we get to play some cover songs. We get to play some of our stuff. We change tempos. We change things around a bit. I got a great lineup of guys with me tonight, so that's going to be fun. That's always exciting. We change up sometimes on our local shows. We get other local players that join us, so that always throws an interesting twist. And, of course, the fans and friends that come out here, it becomes an intimate show, so you can kind of get that up close and that personal. We bring the concert to the little club, which is always kind of cool.
All right, well, thank you, Marshall Dane, for speaking with me, Jordan Freeman, and with Canadian Beats.
It's a real pleasure, dude. Thanks kindly for your time, man.